next presentation is a panel discussion by the dynamic team behind Sous Vide Kitchen, a virtual food hall. I had the privilege of moderating this conversation last week, and there's a whole lot of great information that I think you're going to enjoy. But without further ado, let's roll the tape.
Hey there, I'm Jason Logsdon for Amazing Food Made Easy and president of the International Sous Vide Association. And I'm really excited to be here today moderating the International Sous Vide Association's roundtable discussion called Launching a Virtual Restaurant with Sous Vide. Now, launching a new restaurant or a new concept is a huge undertaking, which is why it's so important to work with people that have done it before. The team at JBH Advisory Group has worked with countless clients, and they are here to talk about how sous vide can be used as a core concept in a virtual restaurant to decrease costs, increase quality, and boost your profits. Joining me today is the Director of Business Development for JBH Advisory Group. He leads business development and supports clients and projects by drawing on his experience as an operator and food service industry executive. He previously worked as the VP of Culinary Excellence for Spectra, where he developed programs to drive innovation and create award-winning concepts such as Top Chef Quick Fire. Please help me welcome Scott Swiger.
Thanks, Jason. Happy to be here.
Next, we have the Director of Culinary for JBH Advisory Group. He has 25 years of experience in restaurants and hospitality markets with past projects that include fast casual restaurant development, kitchen design, and creation of operational policies and procedures. Much of his career has been involvement with new store openings and research and development of recipes for restaurants, high-end retail markets, and food production commissaries. Please help me welcome Buddy Gillespie. And then last but not least, we have the Director of Operations for JBH Advisory Group. She brings over 20 years of industry experience to JBH and Sous Vide Kitchen. More than half of her career was spent within restaurant operations, working for renowned organizations such as Hillstone Restaurant Group, Carlson's Restaurants, and Marriott International. As the Director of Operations for JBH Advisory Group, she is responsible for project oversight, brand development, and client engagement. Please help me welcome Alexis Kukuka.
Hello, happy to be here, Jason. Thank you.
I really appreciate all three of you joining me today to talk about how sous vide and other operational efficiencies can streamline a restaurant launch. I think it's going to be a great addition to the ISVA Summit this year, and I really appreciate you suggesting it and helping put this together. I think it's a huge opportunity for operators to consider in their restaurants and their own operations. Now, I want to start with, it's been a crazy few years. I think we all know that, especially for restaurants, and it's not getting that much easier anytime soon. Scott, what do you think is coming next, and how can operators best adapt to the challenges they're constantly faced with?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I hate to go too deep into trend prediction because probably would have been wrong many times over the last couple of years. But there are a few things that we're seeing very consistently and that I think aren't going away anytime soon. And the three big things. One is challenges with supply chain. Has the pandemic hit, everything adjusted and shifted in different ways, and it hasn't caught back up with itself yet. And the demand continues to fluctuate as places open and close in different parts of the country, go through different processes, and so that's going to continue to happen. We also saw a lot of operators narrow the focus on their menu, to where they're doing less items but focusing on better quality of those items. I think that's something that's going to continue to change. While at the same time, consumers, pre-pandemic and are going to, again, want variety and customization. So really how they cross-utilize products that create depth in menu without, over-expanding, I think is going to be a really, important thing for operators to look at, in the coming year and beyond. And then finally, labor. The one thing the biggest challenge people are facing right now is labor. And, when the unemployment assistance ends, it's not going to come flooding back to food service. The reality is there's other opportunities out there. People have changed careers. Working in restaurants it's tough. It's tough, and so a lot of folks have left the industry during this time and aren't coming back. And those that do, the best of the best are going to have really kind of their pick of jobs because everybody's looking right now. So it's going to be a lot of competition to get employees and to get staff back.
I feel like those were two huge things that were made readily apparent over the last few years, is that the supply chains in every industry got disrupted, and it's a pretty fragile thing. And then the labor, everyone is facing big labor shortages right now, and I agree, some of the people are going to have to be addressing in the long term. Buddy, can you tell us about the experience of opening Banh Mi as an entirely hoodless operation? It's a neat way to approach a concept.
Yeah, it's JBH Advisory Group. At the time, I was director of culinary and restaurant services, and a client had come to us to, they'd come into some money, as none of us do, and we wanted to develop a concept. And so we're racking our brains, should we franchise with this successful one or ride the chain of salad operations opening across the New York City? And then, our office was in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and we would each, once a week, twice a week, be huddled over a garbage can, someplace that was 200 square feet, eating a banh mi sandwich. We were privy to that in New York, having amazing cuisine around each corner. And these were little tiny places, and it kind of hit us as our principal, Brian, said, no one's eating this. We're so lucky to have this. Can we do it? And our thought was, let's make a Chipotle type, banh mi rice bowl concept. And so we did it, as any chef or R&D person would back then in like 2009. I'm marinating, I'm roasting, I'm sauteing, I got blodgets, etc., etc. And then when we got the business plan done and we started delving into finding real estate, we started in DC because real estate was much less expensive. Every office building or location we wanted was like, sounds great, but you're not putting a hood in this place. And so it was like a TV show, right? Rejection. And I had just finished reading Thomas Keller's Under Pressure. And, in the expertise I didn't have, I said, hey, well, just make the concept hoodless. And they looked at me and go, you can do that? I'm like, oh, yeah, no problem. I was lying, of course, and went back to the drawing board, reread that book. I'm like, all right. And, when Poli Science Chef Series had just been released. And so I got one. And I really just started tooling around with it and transformed the whole menu to sous vide the proteins. And, just fell in love with it instantaneously. Just really the quality that was coming out and achieving those textures, and a lot of trial and error, of course, and having a home vacuum sealer is completely different, as we all know, than a nice professional chamber. But once we really got it down and mastered it, well, I'll say mastered it, but again, lying, I just started seeing the advantages, like we can do this. And almost instantaneously, we got a spot in a business building in DC, and it was great. What that allowed us to do was no fryers, no oil, no hoods. Our build-out costs went, way down, obviously, but all the other advantages started coming about. I don't have to worry about, a little drop of oil getting on the floor and someone slipping, burns, it's hoods, etc., quarterly cleanings. But what really just resonated with us was the ability to control overcooking and or undercooking. Alexis and I worked together for many, many years where the chef would come in, the grill cook, and grill off 300 pieces of grilled chicken, but not too much. It's got to have some carryover cooking, then cool it, then slice it for chicken salads, etc. With this, we were producing once a week. We only had the prep team in once a week, laid out all the bags in the 6 pans. It's a great tale. I'll tell another time. And then I would cryovac it and cook it perfectly, and you couldn't screw it up. You set the timer, you set the temp. It could be 6 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours. And once I got it down, we got a little busy, no problem, or you had to run out and do something or handle lunch. You didn't have to worry about the food overcooking, and obviously food cost was intact, waste was eliminated, and that was it. It was game on after that. We were fortunate that another concept down the street, George Washington University, said, you guys are doing something special. We want you involved. And then we just started getting into other colleges and universities that wanted that healthy food with that great texture. And that's really how we delved into developing a sous vide concept. And my favorite moment in life, since I have this great audience, was, when we started this, I ordered 10 Poli Science circulators. And I had my Ray Kroc McDonald's moment when Phil Preston, the president of Poli Science, he walked in the door with the president of Cuisine Solutions. I'm like, you're Phil. And he goes, how do you know me? I'm like, I was on your website a lot. He's like, yeah, you just bought 10 immersion circulators. I got to see what you're doing. People don't buy 10. They buy 1, maybe 2. And I'm like, yeah, let me show you. In our little, what was it, Alexis, 250 square foot kitchen maybe. I had 10 of them, 5 tanks, 2 on each side to really get the water up. 1 giant vacuum sealer that no one knew how to repair. And that was really it. And he's like, this is amazing. He took a picture, put it on his Facebook page, and that was it. We were instantly famous, of course. You all know us. There was such a proud moment, and really from that point on, I only cooked sous vide for about 10 years. And I was never that molecular gastronomic, chef, but I appreciated it. But the sous vide aspect and that form of cooking, to this day, I do it at home. I do it professionally. It just resonates with perfecting the textures of food, and I think that's what we all try to achieve, whether we're sautéing, grilling, roasting. And I'm old school. I can make. I don't mind getting Instapot making, stock, but I'd rather put it in a crusade on the counter. But I have 4 or 5 different, immersion circulators and vacuum sealers and bags everywhere, and I'm proud of that because it's cooking. It really is. If anyone is a naysayer about it, it's learning a new technique to master. And I think if you're not into it now, you're kind of almost telling me you're ignoring a relevant aspect and a way to cook food in the best possible way.
I love how you approach that you didn't quite have enough knowledge to know how daunting it would be to open something without a hood. Like sometimes that's the best way to do something that other people aren't doing. And I will second that. Philip Preston he's always been such a gracious individual with PoliScience, always makes time for people. I love that he is the type of person that, they bought a lot of circulators. They must be doing something exciting. I want to go check that out. And we were talking about this before the call, but I love the team from PoliScience with Chef David Petransik and Philip Preston and Conrad. They're all great and been wonderful to work with. So it's really cool that him just showing up and be like, hey, I thought I would deliver these myself just because I want to see what you are up to. I love all the advantages of sous vide. There's so much, like you're saying, that you can't really overcook the food unless you're really trying to, and you can accomplish it, especially when things get really busy. You don't have to worry. I'm sure there were a few challenges that came up along the way trying to incorporate that into a full menu. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, I'll tell you the first challenge was being in DC. They had never even seen sous vide and using immersion circulator. So we had to convince them. New York City had already done it with some other chefs. I'm not going to tell you I was the first, but I had to write a HACCP plan, which I had never done, and no one shares HACCP plans, just so everyone knows. It's like this tightly guarded secret. So I was on my own. 75 pages later, and a lot of meetings, they gave us a stamp of approval. So that was the first huge hurdle, and fun to get over. Yeah, great question, because I think, as we all know, the biggest challenge of sous vide food was the visual. There it is, and you're walking down a make line, and the customers stand there going, what is that? It was chicken thigh. They thought it was pork. The biggest challenge was taking this, how do we like to say, lipstick on a barnyard animal type of scenario. You're kind of convincing them, trust me, it's awesome. And that's what we did. We just took a toothpick, handed it to you, and they were like, that looks kind of odd. Oh, wow, that's amazing. I'll take that. I'll take 3 of those. And Alexis is the champion of sampling. She was just out there physically out in the streets, hawking people down. There was a bus stop, she got harassment notices. It was great. And we bailed her out of jail. But that was it. Once the proof is in the pudding, as soon as they took a bite, they're just like, what is that? It was perfectly tender, loaded with intense flavor because of the whole vacuum sealing process and the way it was cooked. You can't deny the outcome, how great it was. But that is the biggest hurdle, incorporating the visual. Now, we were primarily sandwiches at the time, so that worked out. But there was just that skepticism, like, what is that? Not everything comes out sous vide perfectly as well as beef does, right? And I tried to sous vide everything, by the way, every last thing you could do. I wish I had it all on video at this point. But that hurdle was where we got over with that. And I think just convincing the world that it's healthier, it's better, and it tastes great. Don't judge a book by its cover, and it worked. And then when we delved into the bowl side, where the protein stood out more, I'm not going to say you covered anything up, but you changed the bowl build, right? You got your base, then the meat went there, and then you got a nice sauce and garnish, and it blended in. And again, once you're eating it, to this day, 12 years later, you stick a sous vide, 18-hour sous vide cut of beef that we sell. It's still, every time I eat it, I've had it 1,000 times, it's still magical and awesome. So I think people always appreciate textures of food. That's what we're all going for, that great chew, but not overcooked. It's just, it's perfect. And that was, but I'll always remember those challenges of the visual of the food.
I feel like that's one of the main ways to convert people is give them good sous vide food. And they're like, oh, this is what you mean by it. And then they don't care about anything else. They're like, I want to be able to do this at home or in my restaurants with the same lack of kind of focused, mental focus you need to turn out really good food in a traditional environment. And I do like your HACCP plan. Comment, it is like, you want my HACCP plan? I will meet you at 2 a.m. outside of the bank with, I'll be wearing the dark sunglasses at a little clandestine meeting.
Yeah, bring the money.
Yeah. Alexis, you helped spearhead the opening of Sous Vide Kitchen, a virtual food hall, which for the record is a really cool setup. I love the tour you gave me, and the food was amazing, especially, coming from so many diverse cuisines out of one location. Can you talk a little bit about the operating model, how it changed with that concept, and how Sous Vide Kitchen evolved?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Jason. And Buddy's giving all of the dirt about our beginnings here. But essentially, Sous Vide Kitchen really was born from Banh Mi restaurant. So Banh Mi was our very first fast casual restaurant. And, we opened, as Buddy just very beautifully describes, entirely hoodless, utilizing sous vide protein. So over the years, really, and thank you for the description of some of those challenges, Buddy, when we were looking at expanding and we were looking at, how can we open a Banh Mi in every city across the country? How can we license this? How can we teach people how to do this model? We knew that really the entire system was very simple and it was incredibly consistent, but the challenges were really in that HACCP plan and in that vacuum sealing step, right? So in our early stages, we were still receiving, we were receiving raw product, we were marinated, we were vacuum sealing. And that there is a skill in that. There is a skill, there is a HACCP plan, there is risk, there is training required. And so we knew that somehow we had to simplify that part of the process as well. So when we were introduced, really our initial introduction to sort of the world-class manufacturing of food proteins was through Cuisine Solutions. And when we met that team and they said, this is amazing that you're doing this, but hey, we have a multi-million-dollar facility and we actually do this. Come try our product. We were, really blown away. And manufactured products have come such a long way in the past, 15 years. And so as we started to evolve from the one single concept of Banh Mi into multiple, we really took that idea about how can we create consistent products across the board and what world-class manufacturers can we lean upon to help us really have an assembly model, an assembly style model build. So in addition to utilizing really now all of our proteins are cooked in an offsite facility, we receive them fully cooked and ready to be rethermed, which essentially makes it the safest kitchen environment because there are no raw proteins in-house. The risk of cross-contamination is virtually eliminated. So along those lines as well, we have sourced world-class sauce manufacturers. We also utilize vegetables and fresh items that are pre-cut and ready to be used. So really in terms of training and safety and equipment needs in our locations, it's incredibly limited. And that's really by design. We wanted to create a concept that was able to be replicated and executed by even a kitchen novice. So really anyone, and as Scott mentioned, the labor challenges that really the industry has been seeing for years and years. We really felt like our production model was a way to combat some of those challenges. So at the core, Sous Vide Kitchen, a virtual food hall, offers at now, because we've grown since we've last spoken, Jason, we have a dozen concepts that we execute on one single production line. And those concepts really vary from our original Banh Mi Vietnamese baguettes and bowls to Vindi, Indian-inspired eats, Mediterranean pure foods, Bao Baby, pulled and chopped barbecue. We have a fully sous vide barbecue concept. And several others as well. We recently launched Veg 23, a vegetarian concept. So each of them really, respond to a different client. We feel that each of them is really unique and different and is able to capture a bit of a different market from the other. So you can have an individual that can order from each of our concepts every day of the week. One day you have Indian, one day it's Latin, one day it's barbecue. And the client or the guest may or may not know that it's coming from that same kitchen, but they can be really assured of the safety and the quality of the products.
I think it is interesting that you talk about like manufactured, food coming in, and it is so good, like what they're doing the few times that I've had it, both in Sous Vide Kitchen, but also, when I went to Korea and Cuisine Solutions and they did this like 8-course meal, and they're like, by the way, all of this we sell as packaged food that can go into restaurants and used in places like Sous Vide Kitchen. And it is just perfectly cooked. I love the core concept of a lot of what you do is we're going to take a piece of protein. It could be chicken, it could be pork, it could be anything, and we're going to make sure that's perfectly cooked. And then we're going to use that perfectly cooked piece of food to go in one of 1,000 different directions. And it's super easy to take in any of those directions.
Absolutely. Buddy, why don't you share your favorite quote about the artist box?
I've always, people that are very skeptical of this, when you talk to chefs, I'm like, it's like, you never find a painter that makes their own paint. I mean, there's a couple out there, but why are you you start out with a great base and then manipulate it and make it your own? And that's what artists do, right? You take the best base materials and make a final product with your imagination. And I think as chefs, we got obsessed with, well, if I didn't chop down that tree and cut that wood, I can't build this house. And that's I think we all need to get out of that mindset so we can focus on plate presentation, quality, temperature, health department regulations, the things we need to do to keep the business thriving and afloat, rather than spending half of our time making sure the proteins are cooked perfectly. I mean, utilize outsourcing. Pre-cooked is not a dirty word anymore. So yeah, I forgot that one, Alexis. Thanks for reminding me.
I think one of the best ways that I heard it phrased, I think it might have been Gerard Berthelon said, I'm not trying to take your job, chef. I'm trying to take the job of the sous chef that keeps calling out sick that you no longer have to rely on. You still do what you do as a master. Scott, I'd love to get your insight into some of how other operations can really utilize some of the lessons you all have learned from Sous Vide Kitchen, especially with the use of sous vide proteins.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm the new one to the group here. I've been with JBH for about a year, and I really wish I had discovered JBH and the work they were doing 10 years ago, because it would have helped with so many challenges throughout my career. A lot of my background is in large cultural attractions, so stadiums, arenas, convention centers, museums, where there's a lot of ground to cover. You're cooking in there's one central kitchen, and then you're spread out over a massive building. There's not hoods all over the place. Traditional method is you've got a lot of people producing big batches. Early on, it's going into hot boxes and being hot held or transported. There's, typically either a lot of waste or you don't have enough, so you're constantly trying to, forecast correctly, and very often you're serving, huge numbers of people in 15 minutes. Everybody's, at halftime, everybody's hitting the concession stands, and then there's nothing, so you've got these big bursts. And really, sous vide would allow you to, one, simplify the labor and get that consistency and quality, but shift a lot of that out of the kitchen to where you're retherming as needed. You don't need hoods. You can use, different equipment to do it, and really improve the quality. Because, consumers, even in those environments, they're expecting more. They're expecting better food. They're expecting unique dishes. And that's hard to do in a spot where you've got a hot dog roller and a pretzel warmer, But you can easily, with, a little bit of electric, you can add something, with really great sous vide proteins. So it also works really well, on the big side. It's also a lot of benefits for it in smaller locations, so we get this question a lot, where people will say, well, how many covers a day do I need to do to make this worthwhile? And really the answer is, not many, because the way it's packaged, and, you're only retherming what you need. You're not cooking from raw, so you can undershoot a little bit, and then you can do things per portion, and the shelf life is there. So there's so much flexibility, in terms of different size and different scales of operations, and how to use the product to reduce waste and, take out the labor, simplify the labor aspect of it, but still offer really interesting, creative food.
I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that, especially in smaller operations, if you cook your food in the bag to pasteurization and then you chill it properly, you've extended the shelf life. And so your product can last a lot longer. There's a lot less waste. And like you said, you're not cooking these in preparation. You are pulling them out and then retherming them almost on demand in a lot of cases. So you can be a lot more careful, and you're not going to have as much just sitting there of raw product that you have to get rid of, because otherwise it's going to go bad. You've extended that shelf life by days, if not weeks in some cases.
Yeah, Jason, and I think we also, as operators, we're also consultants to people, and I tell them, I go, 9 times out of 10, your most expensive product on your menu is your proteins. Why are you rolling the dice with, maybe overcooking it or not it being at its optimal texture. That's what sous vide does for you. I go, if you want to talk about really running a business and, capitalizing on every dollar you spend in your precious protein, whether it's, let's just use beef as an example. I mean, it's going to be along with seafood. Why are you rolling the dice? Here you go. You have a foolproof way of cooking it, and then you can dress it up however you want when you're done. That's a no-brainer to me. And really, evolving a business and then the quality, the texture of it. Why would you eliminate the guessing, eliminate the extra training? Here it is. So that to me is an easy and big sell for this process of cooking proteins.
To me, that's one of the biggest things between home cooks, which, is my background, and restaurants and professionals, is that, as a home cook, I can have some variety in my food and it still be great and everyone's happy with it. With a restaurant, you need it to. Everyone at the restaurant needs to be having the exact same quality every single time they go there. All it takes is, the cook not paying attention once and getting an overcooked piece of meat that now your opinion of that restaurant is going down. And sous vide eliminates that risk, and it guarantees that everything comes out perfect every time.
Yeah, and for the home cook, the best pitch for everyone, you can make dinner. You can drop dinner when you're leaving for work in the morning, and when you come home, it's ready. And that's the best commercial you could ever make. Here's some chicken, here's some potatoes, here's some what have you. 3 bags in, go to work. You come home 9 hours later, cut, plate, done. It's I always say it's the crock pot of the future. I think that gives people that are stuck in their ways a little bit more of a visual, and they're like, oh yeah, you can do this without worrying about if it's not going to turn to mush. It's not at this high temperature. And whenever you get home, dinner's ready. And then once you're really getting a cryovac, you can prep dinner for the week on Sunday in these bags, freeze it, refrigerate it, just get up, make your coffee, hit the circulator, drop some food, and I think that's magical. Nothing's better at getting home. It's like when you go to the bathroom and your entree's on the table when you come back. Same feeling. You get home like, oh yeah, dinner's ready. That's amazing.
I think that's always a big thing that people seem to say is like, well, I don't need sous vide for this because I know how to sear a steak. And it's like, well, I'm proud of you. I can sear a steak. I can grill a steak. I can broil a steak. I can, cook a lot of different ways. I can cook over open coals. I can do, in a smoker if I want to. There's lots of ways to do it. But sometimes I want a steak for dinner and I need to mow the lawn in between. So I'm going to use the sous vide. It's going to turn out perfect. I can go get all my stuff done so I'm not getting in trouble with my wife, and then I still get a perfectly cooked meal at the end. And you know what? Sometimes I might get a nice ribeye and I want to do it on the grill the whole time. Great. Sous vide is not the only way to cook things. It is just one more tool in your toolkit. And I don't understand the concept of learning more ways to cook food in interesting ways as a bad thing. The more knowledge you have, you can pick what works for your specific situation at any time.
Yeah, and the impression factor. I mean, I'll tell you the best quick story. I was with a group of people. It was a wine dinner. I had somehow got pulled into cooking, and I was privy to have this Snake River Farms, Wagyu, American Wagyu, and it was probably $800, big giant cut. And I'm like, how am I going to cook this? We're in Manhattan. I don't have a grill. I don't have this. I'm like, you know what? I took some butter and I melded it with some soy and Worcestershire, made the mash, sealed it, threw it in the circulator. We partied all day or entertained all day. 8 hours later, when dinner was about to be served, I took this thing out of the bag, cut it open on a little propane grill on their balcony in Manhattan. Boom. Cut it. These guys, pretty, heavy diners are like, that is the best steak or meat I've ever had in my entire life. And to this day, I tell that story because somebody might have just went crazy watching me sous vide this, probably, in my opinion, the best beef in this country. And to this day, it was years ago, and they still talk about it. That's the sous vide pitch I'd give to anyone. I got to enjoy myself. I trusted this insanely expensive cut of beef, and I made 8-10 people really happy that evening with a memorable experience. And it was that easy. They couldn't believe it. They were just like, show me that again. What did you, it was in a bag. What did you do? That was it. I converted a bunch of people that night.
That was the favorite job I think I've ever had, was when Snake River Farms was like, what if we pay you to make a video showing how to sous vide our Wagyu prime rib, and we'll send you 2 of the prime ribs and pay you? And I was like, what? Okay. I don't have to pay you to do this. I am in, because their product, was amazing. And using sous vide, it turned out perfectly cooked and was crazy. We've been talking a lot about virtual restaurants or ghost restaurants. Buddy, can you talk a little bit for those that might not be really familiar with that term? How do those differ from a traditional restaurant?
I think in the beginning we referred to them as dark kitchens. I can't explain to you why we use that term, but our funny story is, and we just got some credit in QSR magazine back in May. We didn't invent the ghost kitchen, but we were doing it for a while and completely on a necessity. Being in Manhattan, rents are extraordinarily high. Minimum wage is really high, which is great. We're happy to do it and pay it, and we think we should. But you got to get creative, producing as much as you can with the least amount of staff, equipment, and mistakes. And we had, as Alexis said, we had Banh Mi, and we were opening up a second one in New York City, and that was a storefront traditional restaurant. But here we are, really only having lunch as an option. And then we had started learning about these dark kitchens and utilizing, and what we thought to ourselves, we got this great product, this great process. How can we start another concept? And so we did, and then Pulled and Chopped came to be. And what it really was a dark kitchen or ghost kitchen. You walked in and you saw Banh Mi, and you could order everything on our menu, but through Seamless/Grubhub and through the blessing of the health department, we'd started a second concept entirely in the back of the house, and that would be the ghost kitchen aspect. It's a kitchen really designed for delivery only, and you're not going to have a storefront or brick and mortar. The brick and mortar being just the back of the house. And what that does for you is it could be 2 or 20 concepts, because as a person that's ordering delivery and with the convenience of apps these days, you're online looking for great food. You come across one of our brands, as long as it's made in a clean and validated kitchen, that's all that really matters. And the health department got behind it. And we get as Alexis said, she's built it to 12 now. But that ghost kitchen aspect is we're making great food all the time in a safe environment. Why don't we do it in 12 different ways? And that's what the ghost kitchen brings to life for you. People are walking in and they're ordering one thing, but in the back there's magic being created for all these other menus. And to really slide into that, that's how we kind of morphed into the virtual restaurant. And what that means is, typical food halls, you walk in, there's stalls, right? 1 to 20, and you and I walk around, we pick this, pick that. With the virtual food hall, we have the storefront, but everything's digital on the kiosk, and it's not through your phone, it's right in front of you. And that ghost kitchen now turns into a virtual food hall, meaning you have all these food hall options without needing the real estate to have all these stalls and people, and your one staff can create a multitude of menus. And that's the beauty of the ghost kitchen. It's just lots of concepts, one centralized place, and you really increase your customer base. They don't, rather than just having one menu, if they're not in the mood for that day, that's okay. We've got 11 other moods you can be in, and it really, as a business, you've created this multiple of dining decisions, and you become this center of where people want to eat lunch and dinner, and it's really great. It's really magical, and it's a nice business tool.
As a consumer, I don't know where I'm ordering half the time online. I think it was 3 days ago, I was walking my dog with my wife, and I was like, oh, hey, that's where we order burritos from. Had no idea what direction it was. I knew it was within 2 miles of our house because they deliver. Outside of that, I had no concept of where I was ordering from for 3 years. And you're talking about virtual food halls and having one kiosk to order from. That was always amazing to me. I had my in-laws in town, and we went to DeKalb Market, which is a great food hall in Brooklyn here. And we went out and we found what we wanted and we got it all, and it was all fine, but it was really good food, but it was only fine because it was pretty much cold by the time we refound each other in the giant food hall. And by the time we got back together, it wasn't super hot, where if you can order from one place and just pick it up, it's right there, it's fresh. And I would love to dive a little more into those benefits of running a virtual restaurant and how it could be really appealing to an operator. Scott, do you have some insights about that?
Yeah, I think it's especially appealing right now. Coming through the past year, people are more comfortable than ever ordering through online apps. So my parents, who delivery was pizza, their entire life, now can order anything online and have become comfortable and familiar with that, where they wouldn't have been before. So you've got that reach. For a restaurant operator, if you have an existing physical locations, really it's a low barrier to entry. Your kitchen's already there. Because of the delivery services now, you don't have to staff those delivery drivers, which would have been a huge barrier to entry before. It becomes another thing you have to manage on the process, insurance. that's now all outsourced. So you've got the Grubhubs and the Seamless and the Caviars and all these groups that are taking that aspect off of your plate. And really, operators they're looking to maximize the utilization of their asset. So if you build a 100-seat restaurant, but you're only seating 50 because there's restrictions, there's people aren't going out as much anymore. The economics start to fall apart pretty quickly. You need to drive additional revenue, and so it's an opportunity to drive an additional revenue stream through there. As well as offer some additional variety. Like Buddy and Alexis talked about the evolution of Sous Vide Kitchen and the virtual food hall. You can try things, you can try concepts online without the capital or the risk involved of opening a brick and mortar restaurant, and seeing if it works. So you can create a concept, test it out, see a response, and then develop from there. So there's a lot of appealing reasons for operators to do it, and timing right now is really good.
Yeah, it seems like there's a big confluence of a lot of different factors that are making it very beneficial right now. And Alexis, for operators that might be thinking about enhancing their delivery operation or even creating like a virtual brand, what are some of the most important things they should be considering?
Yeah, it's a great question because, as Scott mentioned, it's appealing for so many reasons, but really adding anything additional or changing your operation at all can really add complexity. So it's important to really think through the entire process from start to finish. So, I guess the first question is, are you interested in taking your current menu and expanding that into delivery operations? Or are you looking to really launch an entirely different concept, right, as a ghost kitchen? Now, when you do that and you're conceptualizing your other brands, will it cannibalize your current base? Are you a pizza restaurant and you're going to launch a flatbread concept? Well, now are you sort of taking sales from one concept to feed another? Or can you add something that's entirely different, that's really lacking in your geographic area, where you can build new clients and build a new base? And then, in that case, really do that cross promotion as well. Well, if you loved our burrito, you might also love our flatbreads or our pizza or something of that nature. So, it's really important to sort of, decide on that concept first and decide if it's the right fit. The next things to really think through are the execution of the menu. So how can you execute this menu, and what can you execute without really adding complexity to your current operation? Because I think that while there are so many benefits, you have to think through, what equipment will I be utilizing to prepare this? Can my current team take on these additional recipes, this additional prep, this additional process? And ideally, when launching something that is virtual or ghost kitchen out of an existing operation, the goal should be to do it with your existing equipment, with your existing team, within your existing confines, and really using it as a way to drive revenue. And then the only time that you should then be adding staff or adding equipment or adding is once you really have developed that proof of concept. But, to launch, you should really try as much as possible to do it without adding that complexity. And another idea about adding complexity is really the number of ingredients within your building. So not only does adding ingredients add additional processes and prep and learning, but it's additional items in your order guide, it's additional items to inventory, additional items to store. It's money that is being put out to obtain the inventory, and it's just complexity in the process. So really looking at your current ingredients and saying, how can I use this in a different way? Can I use this chicken on a burrito and in a banh mi sandwich and on a salad? Or can I use this chickpea in a way that, someone had not thought of before, maybe an untraditional approach? Can I use this herb mixture several ways across, a new menu to minimize the number of new ingredients that I'm bringing in? And that's something at Sous Vide Kitchen that we have been very, very focused on from the beginning, is really how can we sort of maximize the different options while minimizing the complexities. And we find that to be a really, really, key part of the process. The last sort of things to consider, not to be overlooked, are what is that delivery and guest experience going to look like? So packaging is really important when you're looking at building a virtual brand. You have to really look at the type of packaging, how will the items transport? How will it arrive at its destination? Assume it will be jostled and turned upside down and on its head. And, how will it get there? And then also, I think temperature is so important. How can you keep your cold items cold, your hot items hot? What should be separated, and what kind of differences in that experience will that home diner have than someone that was eating it fresh, in an in-store setting? So many things. How will you communicate that menu? Will you utilize third-party platforms? How will those commissions affect your bottom line, and really work all of that in to your plan, to your business plan? So many advantages, but definitely a complex process that needs to be very thoughtfully done.
I like that concept of taking what you currently are doing and how can you tweak that as minorly as possible to start dipping your toes in and try some of these different things. What can you use with your existing ingredients, your existing sauces, but take them in new directions that will allow you to open up and try a few different concepts. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your expertise with us. I learned a ton. Hopefully everyone listening has learned a ton as well. I wanted to give you each a minute or two to give some final thoughts. If you have about the direction of sous vide, why people should be using it in their restaurants, or just restaurants in general. We have an audience here of some great professionals that are trying to make a living and keep their livelihood afloat. So, Scott, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you haven't tried it, try it. We'd love to host you, love to do tastings with people, and it's always great to see, particularly chefs who can be, a little skeptical. At first try the product and then kind of have that conversation of, well, how would you use it? And it doesn't, having that steak perfectly cooked doesn't hamper your creativity, because your creativity is still going to come in all what you do with that, how you plate it, what the sauce is, what the sides are, but to really, give it a shot. And I think people, if they haven't tried it, will definitely be surprised.
How about you, buddy?
Yeah, I would say for people that are skeptical, cooking sous vide it doesn't have to be everything you cook. You have a kitchen, you probably have a microwave, a range, a combi oven, etc. And really going back to that, if you're really trying to capitalize and use every product you have, start with beef. Start with one or two products and see the benefits. See the benefit of being able to prep it when you got some downtime on a Sunday. Maybe you're not going to use it till Wednesday. It's utilizing every hour in the day. Your prep team's here today. None of us want to be held hostage that I hope the whole team always shows up Thursday because those are our busy days. You can do all the hard, heavy lifting weeks before, utilizing cryovacuum in preparation for an immersion circulator cook. And you want to talk about business sense and why you should try it. Take your most expensive product, and then you utilize the time when you have it and cook it when you need it. And that's the benefit. It works around your schedule, because everything comes down to prime costs of time and food, right? And so when you're minimizing the loss of those or the perfect cooking of those, that's just an extremely attractive aspect of sous vide cooking, the most in the business aspect. Utilize people when they're there and perfectly cook your ingredients. And I would also say, and I've talked to Poli Science about this, we're seeing a lot of trends now where you can outsource great sous vide food. Fine, do that. But I would highly recommend the reheat aspect of that. We purchase, outsource sous vide products from great companies, but we reheat them in an immersion circulator bath. And you'd be like, well, why would you do that? For the exact same reason. We want to minimize loss. So when you bring it back to that perfect temperature of, let's say it's 165 for chicken, and then you hold it at 140, it's there when I need it, but God forbid that day was slow. All right, it was held in its pouch and it's perfectly cooked liquids. We can throw that into an ice bath, get it down at temp in the proper range, and we can use it first thing tomorrow. Again, on the business side, how attractive is that to knowing you're prepared if it gets busy, but if it's not, you don't have the loss, because all too often we cook food, reheat it, and hope to sell it with our fingers crossed in a hot hold environment, in a half pan, in a hot hold. And after 4 hours, 6 hours, that product's ruined. I can't use it. Sous vide in a reheated immersion circulator bath, you still have that option. So that's, again, the second reason to get involved with sous vide products and sous vide cooking and reheating.
Alexis, final thoughts are yours.
No pressure here.
None at all. Don't ruin the entire panel. It's all hinging on this.
I would say that, there are so many advantages, and through our work, we're so fortunate to have worked with clients really throughout the industry, within our own operation, but also in countless other operations. And we have proven that there can be labor reduction up to 25 and up to really 33% reduced labor, which in this era that we are operating in, I mean, every operator really can understand the importance of that, and the ability to sort of be freed from that. There is smaller square footage required, really, 30 to 50% less for your back of house operation. So you can really give that space that you have, that current footprint, back to the guests, put it back in the dining room. And when you talk about labor, it's not necessarily just about reduction of labor, it's utilizing that labor to interact with the guest, answer the phone if it's a virtual restaurant, spend more time at the table, right? Really changing that labor from being on the prep side in the kitchen to out in the dining room, really interacting with your guests and building those sales. There are lower build out costs from the get-go, up to 50% less if you build a restaurant really without hoods. So no ventilation or expensive equipment packages really required to operate in this method. So, there's an increase in food safety. These are really like benefits that you just simply cannot deny. And there's no reason to look away from and not investigate and see if it's a good fit for your operation.
Well, amazing stuff, you three. Thank you so much to Buddy, Alexis, and Scott, as well as the JBH Advisory Group, for taking time out of your busy schedules to discuss launching a virtual restaurant with Sous Vide for the International Sous Vide Association Summit. If you want more information, anyone listening, about JBH Advisory Group or using Sous Vide to streamline your operations, the JBH website is a great resource and a place to understand their services, or you can contact Scott at Swiger at jbhadvisorygroup.com. Or if you want more information about the International Sous Vide Association, you can check us out at theisva.org. Until next time, I'm Jason Logsdon. Well, what did you all think of the panel? I had a great time talking to the three of them. I thought they were so knowledgeable and just had so many great insights to share. It's great learning from people like that have, done this repeatedly in multiple locations. I'm really excited to bring up Buddy and Alexis to join me on the stage to answer questions. So make sure you get them in. I've seen some coming in, so I've got those written down so I can put them through the ringer. We got Buddy joining us, showing up, and I think Alexis is coming in a minute as well. There's Buddy. How's it going, Chef?
Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Doing very good. How are you enjoying the summit so far?
Oh, it's amazing. I learned a great deal, especially the presenters that do things that I don't do with the cooking in the jars and the dessert aspect. Very informational. Loved it.
I believe Alexis is coming up in a second too, but in the meantime, we had a great question about Heidi asked, would love to know more about dealing with the food inspector and educating them about the hoodless concept. It's an uphill slog getting them to new ideas.
Yeah, I ran into the same thing. I think in the beginning, one thing that held sous vide cooking back was all the chefs using it at the time were trying to cook fillets at like 125, right? And what that did was it put a lot of hesitation into inspectors' mind. What they did know about it was just that. People are trying to cook meat to mid-rare or rare. And one of the things I did in both New York and DC was explain to them, whatever the USDA cook temp is, let's use chicken. I go, I want to cook at 165. I'm not trying to play that game that you've seen. And I would show them the system, like here, and I pull one out, temp it. And, they were, it was so new then, like no one had heard of it. There you were in 2010 DC. So it was really letting them behind the curtain, explaining to them that you're trying to live by the cooking guidelines established by government agencies, and so that kind of lightened the mood. I personally can't speak for all chefs. We weren't trying to manipulate it into this oddball and proving it's pasteurized. Don't worry, it's safe. No one wants to hear that from me, restaurant chef guy. So I think letting them see what you're doing really went miles.
Awesome. Alexis, welcome to the stage.
Thank you. A little connectivity, but thanks for having me.
We always have trouble running into things like that every once in a while. The joys of technology. We had a great question. We have a lot of caterers that have been attending as well. What's a way that a caterer could really use some of these concepts in a more traditional catering operation?
Well, I saw some of the, I was following some of the chats and I saw one of the questions being, specifically about really retherming like large quantities. And I would say that, there's really a variety of methods that you could use. So, we love using the immersion circulator as really a retherm and method for holding. Also, if you're really doing like pans and pans and lots of pounds of proteins, you can certainly retherm and then hold in an alto sham cabinet, something that's really a low temp holding where you still can control that temperature. Because you can retherm product that has been prepared a variety of methods, I think the goal is just not to overcook. So to ensure that you're doing that sort of slow and as low and as controlled as possible. And we utilize a lot of those alto sham hot holdings as well. So, prepare the product, put it in pans, and then you can hold it, for several hours until delivery.
If people are interested in starting off and trying something maybe small to kind of get their toes in the water to try out this type of concept, what do either one of you recommend kind of starting with as a good training wheel item to maybe go with?
It takes very little. You need a Rubbermaid Cambro that holds, about 20 gallons of water. And, really any circulator. We have always really loved and used the PolyScience Professional Series. They cost about, $700 or $800. And so it just takes one circulator and one vessel that holds water. And you're sort of off to the races. Now, if you're doing the sous vide on your own, and if you're cryovacuuming, that's another level of equipment and has a plan, as Buddy explained. But if you're going to be using proteins that are prepared in an offsite facility, that's really all that's required. And I saw a question about, how do you talk to the health inspector and what do you tell them and how do you educate them? It's really, we have found that we have had to have these conversations several times. It's important that you communicate with the manufacturer of the proteins and that they have a letter or that they have guidance that states that the product was created in a USDA certified facility. And as long as you have that letter on site, and as long as you have the packaging, a box, a label that the product came in, as long as, and with an invoice as well, that usually can suffice and will leave you in a good place.
Have enough documentation there that shows this is indeed what I say that it is, and it came to me in a safe state, and I am serving it in a still safe state.
Yeah, this is what it is, and there's no raw product here. This is actually safer than any other type of establishment. So it really is a health department's dream once you go through those initial conversations and get them on board. We're opening a ghost kitchen in Nashville, actually, and it was several conversations with the health inspector. They said, we don't understand. This is not a food service establishment. There's no hoods. How are you cooking? And we had to go back and forth several times and really explain it. And then they got it and we received the approval to open. So
Buddy, what protein do you think people should really explore adding to their menus that you've seen a drastic kind of improvement through the sous vide process?
In the budget side, chicken thighs, because we all know they're more resilient, but it gets a nice chew and it's not too tough, and it's something you can afford to play around with and not worry about the experimentation costs. And it really, the fact it's an interesting science, and I won't try to be as amazing as David was earlier, but there's a transition of where the natural juices flow out and then the flavors that are present in the bag, like if you have a butter and herbs, flow back in. I'll make up some terms that aren't real, but let's call it osmosis. And but no, that factor as it purges out and it's in there cooking in its own juices and any herbs or spices you added. And I think an important thing to know is the great thing about sous vide is you don't need that much. You put a dash of garlic powder or a little bit of black pepper, it goes miles in the sous vide world because the way it infiltrates the protein. So you're saving costs and all that. You remember the days of making marinade to make sure it was all submerged? I used to look back at that. I'm making 5 gallons of marinade so it all could fit in there. You drastically reduce the amount of marinade or amount needed to sous vide pounds and pounds of meat. So it's another cost saving thing. It's great. Higher end, nothing beats beef. take your cheaper cuts, as someone said before. You take a nice piece of chuck shoulder or a small brisket. You don't need a 6-pounder. And as you know very well, Jason, after a long, you put it in there for. I remember the first time I cooked something for 24 hours, I was scared to death, and I'm like, I go, I'll feed my wife first because she can't sue me. You're there, you're looking at it, like, this thing's been in the kitchen for 24 hours at 148 or whatever I had it at. And I'm like, all right, honey, you try it first. And it's just, it's one of those fun things like, wow, this really works. This tastes amazing. And after you get it, but your cheaper cuts, that's the way to go. And you can really achieve a texture you never could any other way. It's so much easier to screw up a brisket trying to smoke it for the first time. I still can't do it right. And I've done it 100 times. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Brisket's a hard one for me, but I love those tough cuts too. It really transforms it. And it's a great way to reduce some costs as well in restaurants. Wilfred asks, what equipment do you recommend to do a final searing that doesn't require a hood?
You could always use really a hoodless induction burner with a pan. However, in our restaurants and typically we like to recommend equipment that is programmable and that is able to be replicated. So if you're using an induction burner with a pan, that's really, like a chef driven idea. And you're going to put, a steak or a filet that's fully cooked sous vide on that pan and then sear it. And you have to watch it and turn it and so on and so forth. But equipments that do not require a hood, a Turbo Chef is really such a great go-to option. It's amazing what can be done in there in such a short amount of time. And the idea that it is programmable, so that no matter who is using it, you can really program your exact settings for the amount of heat and microwave and air and convection to just get that perfect setting. And then there's other options. One option is through, Panasonic makes an oven that is similar but much less expensive than Turbo Chef, called the Panasonic Sonic Chef. It's another great option as well. Hoodless but programmable.
Yeah, and I'll add on that one thing I could run over. I have right here. Lodge makes these great little cast iron. They look like sizzle plates we used to use back in the day. And if you're really into that, you can throw 1, 2, or 4, in your high-speed oven and let them get hot, almost like a way a pizza stone works. And then what you do is just take the sous vide out and you get that sear on one side. And once it comes out there, 2 minutes later, turn it and your presentation side is seared. Not everyone has the luxury of dedicating the oven to have those little hot pans, but that's a trick we used for many years. It's great. And then those Lodge pans last forever and you get that nice sear without overcooking it. Or you can go old school without, you don't need a hood for a butane torch or the Sizzle, which I know everyone doesn't have, but that's pretty fun. That's a great way to sear post sous vide reheat without needing a hood, as long as you don't set your apron on fire, which no one's ever done, I swear.
No, never.
Never.
Well, I appreciate you all spending time coming and doing a Q&A with us. We appreciate you taking the time on the panel. I had a great time moderating it and learning from all of your expertise. If people want more from you all, they can reach out at the jbhadvisorygroup.com. And if they have questions about how to start one of these kitchens, how to apply the concepts to their own business, I encourage them to reach out to you. You've been very gracious and wonderful to work with, and I really appreciate it. Give them some love in the comments.